Alright, today in the workshop we'll be working on pulling the transmission out of my Mk3 Supra. So first things first is I'm going to have to jack the car up pretty high so that the bell housing will clear when I do get it unbolted. So a few things to note: the exhaust system will probably have to come off completely, if I remember correctly the last time I did it. And I'm going to need about 15 miles of extension to get the top bolts on the bell housing, and you're laying at the back by the wheels, and you have somebody up under the hood helping guide you onto the bolts to get the transmission out. But first things first is that my car is lowered, and in order for me to get it onto the jacks, or the jack stands, in order for me to get a jack under it, I've got to use a scissor jack to lift the car up high enough to get it onto a normal jack. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'll get it all blocked up, and we'll take it from there. Okay, so now I've got the car blocked up. I was going to use my stands, but things get a little wobbly on the stands, and when I'm underneath there, prefer not to have the car wobble back and forth, especially considering I am on a wood floor. But the car's solid on the blocks. It's up high enough, I believe, to get the bell housing to pass under, because I think I'm going to pull it out the side here. And then you could go underneath the car and start doing the, what do you call it, the drive shaft and the exhaust. But I came in here and started taking the stick shift out, because that has to come out. So what there is there are 4 bolts, 2 here and 2 at the front of this boot. So this piece, this here console piece, basically has 1 screw holding it on there, and that's at the side. And then it's basically held in by clips, and then you have to undo the connectors for the cigarette lighter and hazards and headlight washer. And then there's a couple screws here that hold the ashtray compartment on, and 2 up here. I don't know if I necessarily have to undo all 4 of them, but I do them anyway. And you should probably use a magnetic screwdriver, because I've lost many screws back in that little spot. So basically what you do is you pull that stick shift out, pull all that apart to get the stick shift out, and then you're going to pry up on this, which will then hopefully just come right out. Hopefully. Let's see. So you're basically just going to pull this rubber boot up, exposing, I think it just pulls out, I can't remember, oh no. So then there's 4 more 10mm bolts with the Phillips head in the center. Changing the clutch in your Supra isn't the easiest undertaking, that's for sure. But and I definitely wouldn't do it if I was new to repairing cars. I've been messing around with, oh come on, I've been messing around with cars for a little while. I still don't know nearly as much as I'd like to, but I'm getting there. Oh, okay, that's good. Gotta love when that happens. Also, one thing to note, you probably shouldn't... What the fuck? You probably shouldn't work on your car if you're not in the mood to. Like, if you're just having a bad day, and you go out to the shop and you start working on something and nothing seems to be panning out, and you're just getting in a bad, like a worse and worse mood, you're probably going to cause more harm than good. So, my dad taught me this, and he says, you know, when you go to the garage and you're just not feeling it, nothing's going your way, either take a break, come back later, or just call it a night and come back out the next night or whatever. It's hard for me because I actually really enjoy being in the shop. There you go. That's it there, and that comes right out. And there's a short shifter mod that you can do with the R154 shifter. I have yet to do it because I don't know if I really care to have it, but basically this shaft here splits, and you tap the shifter knob to fit on the shaft that's inside the shaft. It makes no sense. I said shaft a lot there, but whatever. So now that we've got this all undone, I'm gonna go under the car. And the one thing I like about this car is that the shifter is inside this hole here. With my Subaru, I got to go under, undo linkages and whatnot. So this makes it really simple. You just undo that. Transmission's going to drop out the bottom when you get everything unbolted. And then hopefully when I put everything back together, I clean this pigsty up. So I'm going to get underneath the car, undo the drive shaft. Pretty straightforward. I'll probably turn on the camera and show you the bolt positions there. And we'll go from there. Alright, so I've got the car blocked up like I said before. Got the shifter out. Now, what I have to do is undo the exhaust right there. Yours might be different if you have a OEM exhaust. This is a 3-inch stainless. And then there's a hanger back there and one more hanger at the trunk piece, or sorry, at the rear bumper. Now, also you have to undo the the drive shaft bolts, 1 and 2. And you can do the back ones there as well. I don't know if you can see that. Let's see. There. So there's 4 bolts on the prop shaft going into the diff. Now, you can just pull the drive shaft down and set it aside, but I think I'm going to take it right off just to make my life a little more simple. And we got some scrapage there. Anyway, and then I noticed that I have an oil leak. I just don't know where it's coming from. It's right there, a nice little puddle after I put it up in the air. So it could be the oil pan. I don't know if I'm even going to worry about it until I'm ready to pull the motor and rebuild it. So a couple other things that need to be done. You got your slave cylinder there that needs to be undone. And then there's the bolts on the bell housing. There's the one there. Oh, where am I? Hello? There. So one there. One there. I think one's missing there. And all the way around. So aside from that, there's also the transmission bracket mount, and then hopefully clutch fork has to come undone as well. And there's a ground on there, and the hanger for the slave cylinders up there. So basically you're just going to systematically take everything apart until your transmission is sitting comfortably on the floor. I think, like I said before, I got enough room for it. I did jack the car up another few inches. I can take a measurement and post that as well with the video, so that way you know how much clearance you're going to need to remove your transmission if you're going to do it in your shop like this. So anyway, I'll get all the bolts undone and fill you in on any crappy parts or stuff that you should know. So okay, so a couple things I didn't say when I was under here last is you need to drain the gear oil out of the transmission, and you also need to undo your speedo cable from the transmission as well. The drain for the gear oil is up there for the R154. It's on the driver's side, close to the output shaft, or close to the back of the transmission. As you can see it dripping away there. And the speedo cable, if you have the manual, well, I guess that's what you'd be doing this for, was the clutch, is on the passenger side. One thing to take into consideration is where your downpipe goes, because when you reinstall your speedometer cable, like I did with this beautiful brand new one, I installed it against the catalytic converter like a dummy. So my speedo cable is snapped, and I don't think there's a way you can recable it. So one of the other things that you have to do is take the clutch fork off before, with the R154. With the W58, there's a little bit of a different procedure. I don't exactly know it, but I saw it in a write-up. So here you are inside. The clutch fork goes on there. You just hook onto it with a pair of pliers and pull it out. It should come out nicely. And then you have to undo the flywheel bolts all the way around, which is kind of a pain, especially if you're by yourself, because you need to get something on the crank pulley, a bar, like a breaker bar, and undo each one individually, and then that will release the pressure plate from the engine, allowing you to remove the transmission. So that's a little bit of a dance when you're by yourself, but you know, that's the way it is. That's the way it is. So a couple other things, like I said before, the speedometer cable needs to come out. I have the exhaust off, and I just put it to the side. I also put the drive shaft to the side as well. So I can't really think of anything at the moment. I've already gone ahead and started undoing bolts. I got the starter bolt out, the slave cylinder is unbolted and out, and I did the bottom bell housing bolts. It will still be suspended by the rear mounts for now, so I don't have to worry about it falling out on my head. Plus there's bolts all up top that are going to be a total pain to get out. So like I said, I'll turn you back on every time I find something interesting that needs to be discussed. So to get the top bolt on the starter, you need about 3.5 feet of extension. Unbolt the cross member for the transmission at the back near the tail shaft, tail output shaft, whatever. Let the transmission come down a little bit, and then you will be able to finesse it out using fingers and stubby wrenches or ratchets. Any which way you can, really. It's not that easy. And then for here's the engine here. So the bell housing bolt at the top, it's right around there behind this heater hose. It's hard, I don't know if you can probably, let's just see. Okay, you can see the one that I got out down there. And then the other one, the socket is right there. And the bolt is over like 1 millimeter. So I'm using a wobble extension, about 8 of them, and I have it so long that, alright, so you can see that extension there is out past the output shaft of the transmission there, and that's how you're going to get those top bolts. You basically go above the transmission to the bell housing. Sometimes it helps if you have somebody up at under the hood of the car that can help guide them onto the spots where they're supposed to be. But I don't right now, so I'm going to attempt to get it on there myself. So I'll turn you back on again when I have some more fun stuff to talk about. So I'm running out of battery, but I figured I'd quick take a video. So as you can see, the rear transmission bracket is unbolted. All the bell housing bolts are unbolted. Make sure you get all of them, because I didn't. And I've got the clutch fork out, like I said earlier in the video. The 2 on the top are very hard to get at. What I do is I take a super long extension, like I said. You can actually see it stretched out over there, maybe. It's literally 4 feet long, and you go right at the top of the transmission. I'm sorry I didn't make a video while I was doing it, because I kind of got into a rush trying to get this thing out with a little bit of help that I had. And then you just unbolt it. It's a pain in the ass, but it'll eventually come. So now I've got it unbolted. It sucks, there's no friggin' flash. Anyway, and I went up top and I used the screwdriver to break it free from to break the bell housing free at the top on the passenger side, because you can get down in there with a pry bar a little bit. And now it's here. It's basically about to sit on the jack stands. And I'm going to do what I did in my other video. I got my scissor jack with my impact and a regular floor jack with the transmission jack on it. I'm really sorry that this video isn't that good now, but hopefully when I get the phone charged up I can do a little bit better job explaining. Anyway, here we go. I'm going to get it out. Do with this hub assembly in the center here to get the release bearing off the pressure plate is, you can see that there. Come on, focus. That there, you're going to use your snap ring pliers. They do make a special one for that, but I'm just going to use the ones that I have. So you're going to pop that off there, and then transfer this hub over to the new pressure plate. it should go fairly well. Okay, so I've got these here snap ring pliers, and I'm just going to use those to open that up. And I'm just going to use my little tiny screwdriver to start to take that off its tracks. Let's try this again. So the reason I didn't do this before, I think I said earlier, was because I couldn't afford a new pressure plate. So I just used this one, hoping that it would right itself. Because when the washer here failed, it warped the fingers in this here pressure plate. And I was just hoping, it was a blind leap of faith, really. I was just hoping that it would have straightened the fingers out and would have acted normal. But the clutch itself has had a higher engaging point ever since, and it just hasn't been that nice. And it just recently started to slip not that long ago. So there you have it. Hub drops out. And there's a certain fashion. You have the nylon. Now why it's nylon, I have no idea, because that's what the failure was last time. Throw that aside. Basically just how it came off, you put it back on. But I'm going to put a little something under there to hold it up high enough. This is where that proper tool for the job thing comes in handy. You'll get it done with a screwdriver, that's no doubt about it. But having the right tool makes a big difference. So then, once that's on there, you just want to make sure you've got it all in, because you don't want it to... It's a big job taking this thing apart. You don't want to be messing around with that. Really hope that the lighting wasn't too bad for this. Like I said, my camera just started dying. I've been out here working all morning, all day, listening to music and making videos for you guys. So, time to do the steps in reverse. So I'm going to put this on the transmission. Then the clutch disc will go on, and that'll help to align it. Then I'll jack the transmission up to the engine, and start to bolt it all back up again. Once it's all bolted in, then I'll go ahead and do the bolts on the pressure plate up and put the clutch fork back in. Maybe I'll turn it on for some of that, but like I said, my camera's dying right now, so we'll see. Alright, so here's the 15 miles of extension that I've built for, I don't know if you can see it up there, yeah, up in the, dang it. Well, anyway, there's all this extension is for just to install the top bolt on the passenger side. Can't really see it up there, but that's where it is up there, versus the one with the bolt there, somewhere on the bell housing. There's one there, and there's one up a little bit more past that rib, and each one has that little channel going to it, which kind of helps guide the socket into where that bolt's supposed to be. So I basically just reinstalled the transmission the same way I took it off, which is also the same way in my Subaru transmission video. One thing to take note at is to install, or to plug in the speed sensor clip on top of the transmission. You can kind of see the wire there. Maybe not. I almost forgot to, and I had to unbolt the back to get to it. It was kind of a pain, but that's alright. So I've got it all bolted up for the most part. Just got some bell housing bolts to do. Starting to get a little tired, but whatever, no big deal. Come on, focus there. There you go. So my pressure plate and flywheel, to make it easier, I'm assuming when the guys who put my engine in a long time ago, they took the dowel pins out of the flywheel, so it makes it easier to line up. But I just make sure that the dowel pin holes are lined up with the dowel pin holes, so that way it all works the right way. Now the forums say 30 something foot-pounds to torque these pressure plate bolts up. I just put a little dab of blue thread locker on there, and I am reusing my bolts. You don't have to, you can order new ones, whatever, but I am reusing mine. So mine are actually just hardened steel bolts that I got from like a fastener store. And when you're doing this, like with many, you're probably going to hear, if you watch my channel all the time, you're going to hear this over and over and over again. Most circular items that you're tightening, you'll want to go in a crisscross pattern to make sure that you have it tightened down evenly all around. Which in this aspect is kind of a pain. So basically what I got here too is up at the front of the car, I've got my breaker bar on the crank. So now that you've got your transmission all installed in your drive shaft and whatnot, you're going to want to refill the gearbox with gear oil. So the forums say, I believe, a 75/90, and I get all kinds of different, well, I don't know what you call it, different opinions and whatnot of everybody. Somebody says when they use full synthetic, the transmission is kind of notchy. I've been going with a semi-synthetic blend for the last few years, and it seems to be pretty good. Like my transmission for an R154 shifts pretty smooth, but I also have the Martin Crawler shifter bushing kit so that it's also a tight shifter too. So anyway, what you got to do is the gear shift, where you pull the stick shift out during the disassembly process of the car, that's where you're going to fill the synthetic or synthetic blend or whatever gear oil you choose. That's up to you. That's where you're going to fill it through. Now, keep in mind, gear oil is really stinky if you spill some on your seats or anything. So I generally use the 1 liters. Now, I've heard anything from 3 to 4 liters, but I believe what you're supposed to do is fill the gearbox till it comes out of the side drain hole on the driver's side of the transmission, which unfortunately, I don't want to admit this, but I drained the oil out of there because I couldn't find the passenger side one. I knew there was one on, like I knew there was a drain plug, but I couldn't find it when I was under there, and then when I dropped the transmission, I also dropped a couple liters of motor oil on my wood floor for my garage. So that's terribly unfortunate. Anyway, back on track. So like I said, it's going to take about 3 or 4 liters of gear oil. You're going to fill it in through your gearbox hole, and be careful not to spill any on your interior. You could poke a hole in the bottom of this and just let it slowly drip. You could squirt it in, up to you. But like I said, keep in mind it's stinky and it'll stain forever. And then I'll get down here and show you where. Okay, so that drain plug that you're gonna fill it up to, which I haven't removed, is okay. Of course I can't find it now. Oh yeah, that's right there. You can see. Let's see if I can get my finger up there to point. Hello. Okay, it's right there. That's the drain plug that you're gonna fill it up to. So, as you can tell, I don't have it off yet. I don't have enough gear oil to make it happen anyway. So, that being said, that's where we're at. I still gotta just hang the exhaust back up, and I apparently have a pretty good oil leak up there somewhere too. So, I didn't think it was as bad as it was, or as it is, but we'll figure it out. Anyway, I think that's where I'm going to cut the video off. If so, thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button for future content. Like I said, I try to post on weekends. I didn't get to this weekend because I got busy and whatnot. So.